Yeah, okay. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Okay. We are on Yudal of a base, 14B. In the art scroll, it's 14B 4. 14B4 on the left side. We're moving along. It's a very complex Gemara. We're really, okay. Now, just to bring us all up to date, I need that. You can tell, right? Thank you. The Gemara says, everyone remembers the Birkat Torah. That's the first thing. That's not what the Gemara says here, but that's halacha. Okay. Now, the Gemara says, "Vakati lahach yudata." Let's just bring everyone up to date. The Gemara just said, like I said to Mr. Tawil came in yesterday, came in from the most complex Gemaras. He came into the class yesterday, so that's good. Now, the Gemara says that we have this pasuk of B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga, and the Gemara learned out. Reish Lakish says this is the source, that a person cannot eat kachim, parts of a sacrifice, when a person is in the state of tumah. How does he learn that the pasuk is referring to eating kadashim? Because the pasuk has two laws written right next to each other, which we call the hekesh, and it compares the law of kadashim, of when someone's contaminated and doing something to kadashim, right next to the law of someone's contaminated and entering the Beit HaMikdash. Morning, Dan. If someone's contaminated and enters the Beit HaMikdash, the pasuk that we know, and he enters, we know the law over there is correct. That's the law. They get cut off from the next row. From the pasuk that says, "V'chol kodesh lo siga, v'lamikdash lo savo." The pasuk says, "Don't come to the mikdash. Don't kodesh. Don't touch." Which we'll have to figure out how to translate that. And then same pasuk says, "Ve'el hamikdash lo savo." Don't come to the Beit HaMikdash. Now, the case of coming to the Beit HaMikdash is a case that incurs the karet penalty. That's the case. The Gemara understands that when and the Torah gives a warning: don't come to the Mikdash. That warning is about something that would lead to karet. Therefore, when the Torah says "V'chol kodesh lo siga," is also referring to a warning that will also come to the punishment of karet. Okay? The comparison is that they're both in the same league. They're both in the major leagues. If you're comparing these two items, they both have a similar major law to each other. They're not different leagues. What makes it karet is its own league. It's a higher sin. The karet sin, being cut off from the next row, dying even before 60, is a higher sin than something that just gets lashes and nothing more than that. So, and if I put these two things together, by putting them next to each other, I am talking about similar league. Similar league means that they both will be subject to the punishment of what? Of karet. And that only could be true. That only could be true if you actually eat kadashim when you're tameh. Because that's we only find eating kadashim when you're tameh is subject to the punishment called karet. Therefore, when the Torah says "B'chol kodesh lo siga," that prohibition is referring to eating kadashim. Right? If you want to send to the group, if eating kadashim. And also the Gemara said, by the fact that you spoke, the Torah wrote it in the language of Nigiyah, of touching, so that teaches us an additional prohibition for touching food when you're tameh. So that's what the Gemara said. At this point, after the Gemara is saying that B'chol Kodesh, see, we got instant. You send the text, and instant, we got someone on the screen. So, good morning, Adam. Good morning, Adam. There's no karet for touching. Person touches holy foods, parts of a korban, when he's in a state of contamination. He does not. The Torah does not write this ever karet for such a violation. The Torah only writes karet for eating holy foods when you're tameh, when you're contaminated. Oh, very good. He knows that it's referring to not eating because it's connected to another prohibition. And that prohibition that it's connected to carries with it karet. So therefore, this prohibition that it's connected to also carries karet. But the fact that you put these two guys together, the fact that the Torah put the guy, we'll call the guy who is contaminated, the Torah writes a law regarding kadashim, and the Torah writes another law, someone's contaminated when it comes to the Beit HaMikdash. So what's the given? The given is coming into the Beit HaMikdash gets karet. There's another pasuk that says Someone who comes to the Beit HaMikdash when he's contaminated, he gets what? Correct. There's another pasuk that says, if you eat kadashim when you're contaminated, the person gets correct. Those are two givens. What's not given is that's that onesh that the Gemara refers to. That's the punishment is given. But the question is, where is the good morning, Mr. Haber? What about the question is, what about the warning of the Torah, Mr. B'Tesh? We're in search of where does the Torah tell us that you cannot eat kadashim, holy foods, when you're in the state of contamination? Where is the source for that? That's where the Gemara wants to know. And the Gemara says, I have a pasuk that says, B'chol kodesh lo sigah, and that pasuk is going to be a source for eating, that the prohibition of eating holy foods when you're in the state of contamination. How is that? Morning, Adam. How is that going to be? How is that going to be the source? The Gemara says that sometimes you could tell me something by the way you connect things. When you put things together by grouping things next to each other, sheds light on the other. Because by the fact that Hashem grouped certain things together, is teaching us certain laws by the fact that you're in this category. So by the fact that the Torah puts together the law of B'chol kodesh lo sigah next to the law of not entering the Beit HaMikdash when you are contaminated, so the fact that together, that will teach us something. It will teach us that this law number one, is talking about something similar to law number two. Law number two is something that carries the kareit penalty. So therefore, law number one is also referring to something that carries the kareit penalty. Like I said yesterday about the 10 Commandments. Everyone, the Torah grouped the prohibition of not to steal, next to the prohibition of not to commit adultery and not to commit adultery. And why does the Torah put it right next to that? To teach us and also to teach us that we can learn that it's talking about kidnapping. Because the same way, if a person commits adultery, it gets death penalty. So too, by grouping it together with the other prohibition of murder and the other prohibition of adultery, so the Torah is talking about things that carry with it the punishment of death penalty. So therefore, when it says don't steal, it's also referring to a type of stealing that will get the death penalty, which is the stealing, Mr. Haber, that gets the death penalty. That's kidnapping and selling it. So therefore, by grouping something together, it identifies, when you talk about a major league player, and then you mention another player. So most probably he's also a major league player if you're mentioning him together with him. You're not going to mention a group of major league player with a minor league player together. It's two different leagues. So, morning, Mr. Ajmi. Good to see you.
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning. Yes. Very good. Very good. We're not in the search of the punishment. The punishment, we know we have the givens and they have the things that's not given. What is given here is we have psukim that tell us the punishment. There's a punishment on record for eating holy foods when you are contaminated. There's a punishment for going into the mikdash when you're contaminated. The same punishment. Eating holy foods when you're contaminated, correct. Entering the Beit HaMikdash when contaminated, correct. The punishment is given. We're in the search of the warning. Where does the Torah tell us and warn us not to go ahead and eat holy foods when you're contaminated? We know the Torah tells us the punishment, but the Torah, we have a rule. The Torah will not give a punishment without telling us it's forbidden first.
Well, we have that.
No, so Rish Lakish says the pasuk that he has to tell you can't eat foods when you're contaminated is b'chol kodesh lo sigar. It's two different psukim. There's another pasuk that says if you eat holy foods when you're tamei, that's a different verse. And this pasuk is a different verse. This pasuk is not talking about the punishment. It's talking about the warning. The Torah says all holy foods don't touch. That's a warning. Don't touch. Don't touch. Like someone says to their child, don't touch it. That's a warning. It's not a punishment. The punishment is if you tell your child, by the way, if you touch it, there's consequences, and the consequences you're going to lose your allowance. That's the punishment. But the warning is don't touch it. That's the warning. Yes, Mr. Bidet. Right. So if someone's not aware they're contaminated, so then they will not get the punishment of karet, but they'll get and if they ate the kadoshim when they were contaminated, they weren't aware of it, or they entered the midrash, then they have to bring a korban. Then they have to bring an offering. Morning Mars. So now, so the Gemara said, if the right word is through context, is that the right word? If you through the context that the subject matter that you're referring to, we learned out that the pasuk is referring to a warning regarding eating kadashim when you're in the state of contamination. We know that the pasuk is referring to eating by the fact that it grouped it together, even though it used the word touching, but it's referring to eating. But also the Gemara says, we also going to learn the prohibition of how do you know you're not allowed to touch foods when you are contaminated, why you can't touch sacrifice of foods? Because even though we said the verse is talking about eating through context, for the fact was grouped together, but the Torah could have used a word that's more direct to eating. It could have used a word called eating, don't eat it. But the Torah used the word don't touch it. So the Gemara says that usage of the language of touching also teaches us another prohibition that you're not allowed to touch it as well. It will not carry for touching it. It will not carry that punishment of karet. But that we have two lessons from this pasuk. One lesson by the fact that Torah through context, through connecting it to some other law that carries karet, therefore teaches that this pasuk is talking about an item that carries the karet, which means eating it when you're contaminated. And for the fact that the Torah uses the word of touching, it also teaches us the law regarding you can't touch it. Yes, Mr. Batesh. The touching, as Mr. Batesh says, has two meanings. Here it has two meanings. One meaning, it is literally don't touch it, but it also here means don't eat it. Exactly. Like we gave the case yesterday, you tell the diabetic, don't touch the food. You don't really mean don't touch the food. You really mean don't eat the food. But that's how you say don't touch it. What did you say, Mr.? No, maybe we'll get to Shishkabab a little later. Okay. Okay. So the Gemara says, now we're on Art Scroll 14b, top of the page. 14b4. 14b4, top of the page. Vakati lahachiv da'ata. If this is how you're explaining the pasuk is coming to explain it, the way you're explaining the pasuk, when it talks about eating, regarding the prohibition of eating, you're saying it's talking about eating it while contaminated, but that happens after the sprinkling of the blood. As you know, after they slaughter the animal, one of the things they do is they sprinkle some blood on the altar. The law of eating from the animal, from the sacrificial animal, when you're contaminated, that is subject to the punishment of karet, is only after the sprinkling of the blood. Only if the offering was fit for a person to eat. And when is it fit for the person to eat? After the sprinkling of the blood. Then that's when, if a person eats it when he's contaminated, at that point, he's subject to the penalty of karet. But if he eats from the sacrificed animal before it even fits for eating purposes, that's not subject to karet. And Rashi brings the source on this law. Okay, we have a new law that we didn't say yesterday. This is a new point, right, Morris? The new point is That which we said, if someone who's contaminated eats from the offering while he's contaminated, that he or she will be subject to the correct penalty. That's only applies if the animal was already processed, that there was already the sprinkling of the blood. But if there was no sprinkling of the blood, we will not be subject to the correct penalty. When the Torah says it's correct for eating the animal when we eating the meat of an offering, while he is contaminated, is only referring to a case when the blood was already processed, when the animal was fit for eating by people that were tahor, people that were pure, who are clean, were able to eat it. But if you're not clean, if you are tamei, then you get the person will get the correct penalty. But if, let's say, the animal, you slaughtered the animal, and yet you did not yet sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach, there is no punishment of karet. So now the Gemara says, "Hahu mebayile l'tamei she'achal basa kodesh lefnei zrikat damim." We see that Rish Lakish says that this pasuk is referring to eating from the korban before the sprinkling of the blood. What happened was, let's say you slaughtered the animal, and they cut it into pieces. First you slaughter the animal, and the Kohen is supposed to catch the blood, right? And that's called Kabbalah. And he catches the blood, and they're supposed to sprinkle some blood on the altar, whichever the laws are. But before he went ahead and he sprinkled the blood, someone went, let's say the Kohen went, and he cut the piece of meat and he ate from the meat. Whatever he did, he likes raw meat, or he cooked it and he ate it. I mean, some people like he had a shish kebab. He made a little. He cooked it. Whatever. He is by the temple. He's in the court. He's in the courtyard of the temple, and he sacrificed the animal. He slaughtered the animal, and after he slaughtered the animal, he goes ahead and he ate something. Either he had a little fire in the courtyard, the same way they ate other animals, and technically they could eat the animal in Yerushalayim. Let's say a carbon toda, a carbon shlomim. The light holy animals can be eaten throughout Jerusalem. Haray would only be Dr. Navid when the guy willingly knew what was going on. I'm the Kohen. I knew the other Kohen did not yet sprinkle the blood of the korban. Let's say I'm a Kohen, or I'm yourself for whatever reason. I know it didn't happen yet, and I went and I did it anyways. I like raw meat. The Kohen likes raw meat. You know, there's something people eat raw meat. There are some people that eat it. I don't recommend it, but people eat it. Okay. So the Gemara says, "Who mebayile the tamei she'achal basa lefnei zrikat damim." Let's say let's say what Jay? Let's say we'll give the case. The case is that he took from the meat of the korban pesach, let's say, and he took it into Yerushalayim, he took it into his house, and for some reason they didn't sprinkle the blood. He knows the blood wasn't sprinkled. He lived, and the guy said, "I'm going to sprinkle. I'm going to get to your blood later. Sprinkle that blood of the animal later, whatever." Or there was a Kohen in the courtyard, and he became tamei, and he's supposed to leave the courtyard. Okay, and he ate it. So the Gemara said, the itma. We learned the following. Tamei she'achal on top of the page of 14b, 14b4. Tamei she'achal basa kodesh lefnei zrikat damim. someone who's tamei that eats from the basa kodesh, eats from the holy meat of the korban before the sprinkling of the blood. So what's the question? The question is he subject to lashes? Is there a prohibition? Is there a pasuk that teaches us that he'll get lashes on such a thing? So Rish Lakish Omer, look at. Rish Lakish says that there's malkut, there's lashes for somebody to go ahead and eat from the korban if he's tamei, and he eats from the korban before the sprinkling of the blood. Now, of course it's prohibited. Of course it's prohibited to eat from the korban before the sprinkling of the blood, because if the korban, the offering is not fit yet. It's not fit for the kohen to eat. But the question is, not everything that's forbidden is subject to lashes. Not everything that you can't do, you're not allowed to do in life. Like a person is not allowed to go a day without putting on tefillin. There's no lashes if you don't put on tefillin. It's a sin. You violated a mitzvah say, and he's accountable for it. He has to repent for it. There's no lashes. It has to be a law. It has to be a Torah says don't do it to get something that right. Torah says by being inactive that you were supposed to do, you won't get lashed for not doing, even though you did a sin. And sometimes you even could do an action, not making mitzvah when you have to do it is a sin. I mean, if a person if the Torah says, God says, do this. I want you to do. I'm instructing you to do this. I didn't give you an option. Say, if you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. I'll give you credit if you do it. God says, no, do it. Torah says you have to. Torah says Hashem says you have to get married, right? God says the person has to get married. One of the mitzvahs of the Torah. Person says, I'm not getting married. He's violating the mitzvah of the Torah. Torah says that's what the Torah instructs you to do certain things. You don't listen. There are certain things that the Torah doesn't mandate, but you'll get credit if you do it. Like certain things. But sit is an example. When in a case, if you have a four corner garment, you're obligated to put on tzitzit. If you have a four corner garment and you don't put on tzitzit, you're violating the Torah. If you're wearing a four corner garment, but if you go ahead go into a store, a Judaic store, and buy a four corner garment, and then in order to do the mitzvah, that you created the mitzvah. That you made, but as a result of that, you got the mitzvah. But so now the Gemara is, by the way, Mr. Ashby, a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think that the Torah says to do something. If I do it, I get a reward. If I don't do it, nothing. But they don't realize they had to bring one of the things that people have to do is bring a. It's not lashes, but it's a sin. Like the Sefer Chinuch said, if a person does not do these mitzvot that he's Torah says to do, he is mevatel aseh. He's nullifying a mitzvah. Everybody, whatever Torah says, eat matzah on Pesach. Guy doesn't eat matzah on Pesach. Is it okay? He didn't eat matzah on Pesach. No, he violated an obligation that he had to do. Make kiddush on Shabbat. What say? He doing like Nathan, beautiful. I'm Mrs. Aseh. I'm Mrs. Los Aseh. Forgive me for the things that I was supposed to do and I was inactive. Okay. So the Gemara. Mr. Shafty's really enjoying it. So the case of eating before they sprinkle the blood is subject matter whether there's no karet. But the question is there lashes? Is there malchut for eating? Is there lashes for eating? Adam, you with me? If there's eating an animal, the sacrifice parts before the sprinkling of the blood, there's no karet. That's a given. But the question is there lashes? So
and the fact that he's coming and he's already in the temple, that's correct. No?
doesn't mean that he has to be in the temple, by the way. You could have somehow the guy could be outside the temple. It's possible for us to be outside the temple too. But we were. It could be in his house, and it could be in his house in Jerusalem. We want to know about multiple. There can also sometimes there's multiple prohibitions, multiple punishments. Multiple lashes. So the Gemara says like this: Ditma tamei she'acha basa kodesh lefnei zrikas damim. Someone who's tamei, was contaminated, and he ate from the holy meat. That means holy meat means from the korban before the sprinkling of the blood. Reish Lakish Omer Lokeh. Reish Lakish says he's subject to lashes. Rabbi Yochanan Omer, Rabbi Yochanan says, ain't a Lokeh. There is no lashes. And now the Gemara wants to know what is the reason behind their argument. Why does one say there's lashes and one say there's no lashes? So the Gemara explains. Reish Lakish Omer Lokeh, like Yaron says, he has a pasuk. B'chol chodesh lo siga. Torah says all holy foods don't touch, and we explain don't touch by the fact don't eat, because the fact that it's next to the pasuk that talks about coming to the mikdash when you're contaminated, and that's talking about karet. So therefore, this is also talking about a case of karet, and a case of karet is only when you go ahead and when you eat it. Lo shna, but not when you touch it. Oh, very good. So that's what the Gemara is going to ask. How could this rabbi, you just told me that they were talking about when it comes to eating sacred foods, you told me that the pasuk is referring to karet, but karet is only after the sprinkling of the blood. So how could Rish Lakish say that this pasuk, this warning of the pasuk, is referring both to when the blood was already sprinkled and before as well? If you already told me that the context of this pasuk, when it says b'chol kodesh lo siga, but the fact that it's compared to not coming to the mikdash when you're tamei, therefore b'chol kodesh lo siga is talking about a case of karet, a case of which is only eating after the sprinkling of blood. So that's the Gemara's question. How could Rish Lakish use this pasuk not only to tell us for after the sprinkling of the blood there's a prohibition, but also before the sprinkling of the blood, if you told me that based on context of the pasuk, for the fact that the pasuk is connected to just preposition to the other law of coming to the mikdash, which carries karet, therefore this warning is also a warning about something that will carry karet, and the current karet is only after the sprinkling of blood, like Mr. Bitesh said. So how does Rish Lakish, where does he get this additional warning for something before the eating before the sprinkling of the blood? If based on context, but the Torah grouped this together with the other law, it should be talking about after the sprinkling of the blood. That is the Gemara's question. It's a warning, but the warning should only be based on context. By grouping this law next to the other law talks about as something that's subject to karet. Therefore, this law also should be talking about something that's subject to what? Karet. The only time there's karet is if you eat it when you contaminated after the sprinkling of the blood. So how does Rish Lakish get this law, this additional law, for a warning for before the sprinkling of the blood? That is, and there'll be lashes. Where did he get that from? That's the Gemara says you can't. If the context of the pasuk is teaching us after the sprinkling of the blood, you're adding something. The Gemara's going to answer. He has an extra something to add. That's what the Gemara's going to speaking out. The Gemara's answer going to be. That's the setup of the Gemara. Like Mr. Azri said, you're adding something new. You can't just add something unless there's a special teaching that teaches it. You can't eat it. It's forbidden to be eaten. Everybody, nobody, the Kohen, nobody's allowed to eat the Torah. The Kohen, nobody's allowed to eat it. It's not fit yet. If the Kohen, you have the ability to go ahead and sprinkle, nobody can eat it. Nobody can eat it. Touching is not an issue as long as you're not contaminated. Exactly. But if you tameh, no one's tameh. Nothing's tameh. No, the comment it's not fit yet. You have to do something to make it. Like certain things in order to make it kosher. You have to do certain things to make a food kosher. You have to get rid of the blood. You have to soak it and salt it. Certain things in life you have to do to get it ready. It's kosher meaning Yaron. You slaughter an animal, it has potential to be kosher to eat it if you salt it and you soak it and you salt it. Until you soak it with salt, you can't eat it, even though it's a kosher animal. But you just can't, you have to wait until there's a process to make it fit for you to be eaten. Okay, but the roasting is the way, that's how you get rid of the blood. Right. Like Yehuda said, there's a way, if you roast it by burning out the blood. Okay. Lashes before and one says you're not. But the Gemara is now focusing on Rish Lakish. Just like let's just. Okay. So the Gemara, like by liver, right? That's what they do by liver. They do a little salt, certain amount, but not. It's mostly roast. Yeah. You guys don't touch liver. Different communities in the Sephardic community, different customs in the Sephardic community. Okay. You're saying it's not from a halachic point of view, Mr. Andrew, it's just a taste for it to view. Okay. Okay. Let's continue in the Gemara. So the Gemara says the following. And the Gemara explains. Rish Lakish omer loker, Rabbi Yochanan loker. Rish Lakish omer loker. Rish Lakish says loker b'chol kol zosiga. Loshna, he says lefnei zrika, no difference before the sprinkling of the blood. V'loshna, there's no difference. Achas zrika, there's lashes. Rabbi Yochanan omer ina loker. Rish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan says he does not get lashes. Why not? Now the Gemara explains Rabbi Yochanan's reason. Because Rabbi Yochanan the Tameh. Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning. If you recall, where did Rabbi Yochanan find a source for someone who's contaminated to eat foods from a korban? He came on to something that we call the Gzeira Shaveh. The Torah used the word tumato. The Torah used the word tumato by the case of somebody who eats foods that when he's contaminated, the Torah says if you eat. Right. Now we're focusing. We're going out to the other rabbi. We're going to get back to the focus of Rish Lakish, but the Gemara just brought in their machlokas. Rabbi Yochanan, the other rabbi, he says there is no lashes if you eat the sacrificed foods before the sprinkle. Why? The Gemara says because based on where he learned out his law from, will teach us that law. Let's explain. How does he know? Where does he know the warning? This Rabbi Yochanan, that you can't go ahead and eat sacrificed foods which is kashim, when you are contaminated. Where is his source? He does not use b'chol kol hashosika. What does he use? He says, I have a gzeira shaveh. Right, but he's back, he's going back. Right. He said, the pasuk says, the Torah says 2 cases of punishment. It says if you're contaminated, you enter the mikdash, this correct. The Torah says if you're tamei, use the same word tumato, and you ate kadashim, when you're tamei, you're subject to correct. Okay, both cases. He ate holy foods when he was contaminated, he gets correct. He enters the mikdash when he's contaminated, he gets correct. That's the Torah uses this, and the Torah uses the same word tumato in both cases. And the fact that Torah uses the same word tumato in both cases, that teaches us that the same way there's a warning and a punishment over there, there's a warning and a punishment over here. And therefore, we're going to learn out that there is a warning for eating foods when you're contaminated. Using the same word teaches us that this is compared to the other one and has the same type of law as the other one, that the other one has a warning. So therefore, this teaches us also there's a warning, that there's a don't do this by that one. So there's a don't do this by this one. But the fact that the Torah uses the Gzeira Shaveh, right, Ariel? That's what the Gemara said. Now that we said that the Torah teaches us the warning, don't do this, meaning don't eat kadashim when you're tamei. And we learned this from the pasuk of entering the mikdash when you're tamei. And the law of not eating foods when you're tamei that is subject to karet is only after the sprinkling of the blood. So the whole prohibition of not to eat foods when you're tamei is only in a case of karet. But that's what is that clear or not clear? No, not clear. But let's make it clear. How do we know that the only way we know there's a source for teaching us you're not allowed to eat foods when you are contaminated, sacrifice foods, is only from a pasuk that talks about the context of karet. And the context of karet is only if is only after the sprinkling of the blood. Once the given is karet is only if they sprinkle the blood and you were contaminated and you ate from it, then there's karet. If you did not sprinkle the blood and you ate from it, there is no karet. That's the question. If there's lashes or no, there's no karet. So if Yochanan says there's no lashes. No lashes. No, after there would be lashes. There is lashes afterwards, Rabbi Yochanan says. It's only, everyone agrees afterwards, right? Only the question is before. Only the question is before. Right. Yeah, but the question is, we have to know if there's lashes or no lashes. The fact that you can't eat them doesn't mean there's lashes. True, but there might not be lashes for this prohibition. So bottom line is the Gemara is saying that the way you learn out this law that you can't eat kadashim if you're contaminated, it's only in the context of something that has karet, and karet is only after the sprinkling of the blood. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan says we have no source for that. There's the lashes before the sprinkling of the blood. So the Gemara says, look at the Gemara's going to say it inside. Rabbi Yochanan tamei de amakro tumato. The chiksiv tumato, when it says tumato, when you eat, the idea of eating when you're tamei is in the context that carries karet. That's all. That's what it's talking about. The karet, it's talking about after the sprinkling of blood. So the whole lesson that there's karet and there'll be a warning for eating foods is talking about when you're tamei. It's talking in a case when it's after the sprinkling of the blood. That's the case that we're talking about. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan has no source for before you sprinkle the blood. So the Gemara answers, Hahi mikol kodesh nafka. The way Rish Lakish learned it from the extra kol, all foods you can't eat. The Torah did not need to say b'chol kodesh. The extra word, of course, kodesh l'sigat. Good morning, David. But the fact that the Torah said b'chol kodesh, the extra kol teaches us not only after the sprinkling of the blood, but even before the sprinkling of the blood, there is a prohibition of eating from it, and that's going to be the source of the Gemara. It's a little complicated, everybody. Think about it. But now we have an extra ribui teaches this. Okay. Have a great day, everybody. Thank
you, Rabbi.
Of the idea.
Yom Tov.
Amen.
No, send it. Didn't we need a one? Yeah.
Which
Congress? With five in the Senate?
Good thing. Maybe we could pull the time. Head from 5 to 8 o'clock. You know, I'll try to. This one, one.
There's no big. Only bar. Oh.
Yeah. You do.
Yeah, I'll come in. What? Any clear out?
Well,
Okay, yeah.
to me, yes. There was a trap. The Democrats, took the bait. Now the watershed between the range, between the Commonwealth Day.
Stand for the house that.
Well, we got the house. The Senate is, then.
What happened in the house, doctor?
We'll, probably gain the house.
Both?
Well, the Congress, but the